We now have in studio with us our special guest for the day. Had a little difficulty getting here all the way from Columbia, but she made it, and we're glad to have her along with us. Folks, I'd like to introduce you to a voice that's not unknown on the airwaves of WRD, and that would be the president of the South Carolina Policy Council, Ms. Ashley Landess. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I am sorry about the technology mess-up.
Hey, that's quite all right. You should have seen the first show. Talk about a technology mess-up.
Never noticed it.
Getting a little better as we go, but still a lot of room for improvement. But, folks, I don't want to waste any time in this segment because we've got some, what I'm going to call breaking news that you're not going to hear, by the way, on the newspaper at the Greenville News. You're probably not going to hear about this on WYFF, WSPA, or even, oh my gosh, Fox 21. You know, that ultra-conservative news channel is not going to tell you what you're getting ready to learn here on Conservative Voice. You know, we have got, just put a little foundation here, we've got a Republican-controlled legislature. We've got a Republican governor. We've got Republican constitutional officers in South Carolina. We also have problems, for example, with folks being thrown off the ballot last year, some 250 candidates thrown off the ballot. We have problems going on with that. We've got, you know, a former lieutenant governor that was, charged and convicted with ethics violations. We've got a current Speaker of the House who is under investigation. You would think that, especially since the governor appointed a task force on ethics reform, that, it would just sail right through because, first of all, it's the right thing to do. Second of all, we've got all Republicans, and, aren't all Republicans ethical, moral, decent, honest, hardworking American people that want the right things for you and I? Well, let's hear what's going on with ethics reform in South Carolina, because I think, folks, you better buckle your seatbelt or sit down in your recliner and lean it way back. You might fall out when you hear what's going on. Ashley, what's happening?
Well, I'll tell you what, the good thing about me being a little bit late is there is no time for small talk, folks, so I'm going to dive right in. A bill passed last week. It passed the House committee. It passed subcommittee and full committee without a copy of the bill ever being made public or available to the public. No one could look at this piece of legislation.
You mean similar to the health care bill that was passed in Washington, D.C., that we were told that we got to pass it before we know what's in it?
I think this goes even a step further. I believe there was at least a text of something.
Yes.
That was passed. This, as far as we know, there was no text available. The bill was introduced as a shell bill, folks. That means a title, a description, no
and a bill
text.
Number.
Right. But it as far as we know, and again, I don't know what those House members were looking at, those committee members. I know we couldn't see a piece of legislation, couldn't get it up until it had already passed full committee. Now, I've spoken with folks in watchdog groups and journalists, folks all over Columbia who have been there for a little while, and no one can remember a time when this has been done, when they pushed a bill through this way. But let me tell you what's in it. This bill was pushed by the Speaker of the House. And just to get to the chase here, at a time when we are organized, think about this coalition, Harry, of folks that we've brought together over the last several months. You have Common Cause and the South Carolina Policy Council.
Yes.
You've got Rhino Hunt and the Progressive Network.
Yes.
You've got the Coastal Conservation League.
Environmentalists.
That's right. The League of Women Voters, Tea Party organizations, the Campaign for Liberty. Folks, you have a coalition that has not come together really ever, at least not that I can think
Because
of.
those other guys have always been considered the enemy to what we want, whereas in this case what we want is ethical, good government, and both sides want ethical, good government.
Right.
They have some different ideologies, but in this vein, we've got a lot of commonalities as well.
Absolutely. Folks are coming together around this theme of, let's end the corruption. Let's restore citizen government. And we all want the same thing here.
Yes.
And I don't think I've ever seen this many energized citizens. So here's the climate. People across the aisle want the separation of powers, the transparency that you have to have in order to have
good government.
That's right. Well, even better, freedom.
Freedom.
Actual
Absolutely.
freedom and control of your government. We have the highest concentration of power and secrecy in the nation, and we've put that out there. Everyone knows this is going on. So what do? What do? They stall legislation that would actually do some of the things we've talked about.
Yes.
None of that, as far as I know, has made it anywhere.
No.
But you know what has made it? This piece of legislation has passed subcommittee and committee within a couple of days. It's been right across the desk. It's coming up. And in a nutshell, folks, this legislation decriminalizes ethics violations.
Wait a minute. Decriminalizes.
Decriminalizes ethics violations.
So, just to set the record straight, if this legislation is passed by the House, makes its way through the Senate, signed by the governor, goes into effect, the very things that Ken Ard got in trouble for would no longer be considered criminal, and therefore you can get by with doing it.
I think that's right. I think at least some of the allegations, yes, that's correct. That's correct. In other words, if you use your campaign fund to benefit yourself personally,
yes,
no longer a crime. If you use your office for personal benefit, no longer a crime. Folks, essentially, the highest fine that we see on here is something like $2,500. Now, they've replaced where before you actually had to do possible jail time
right,
for violating these ethics laws. Now, there's no prison. Wait, I'm sorry, let me take that back, Harry. Folks, there's one crime, I think, that's still in there. There's one thing that you can still be
criminally charged
right.
for.
That's right. You know what it is?
No.
Leaking information about a complaint filed against a public official.
Wait a second. So if a private individual leaks
right.
information about a complaint,
correct.
You can still be criminally charged.
Absolutely looks
but
that way.
But the person who actually did
mm-hmm.
the potential criminal activity
you got it.
Is not charged. Folks,
that's right.
This is what we're talking about when we talk about wanting to make South Carolina the freest state in the nation. How will we ever achieve any of this stuff when this is what passes for ethics in South Carolina? These folks should be absolutely ashamed. And we're not but about 3.5 to 4 minutes away from going into the bottom of the hour break. It's a hard break. I want to give out the phone numbers again because I'm hoping that there's some folks out there that are listening to this that are just as appalled as I am. Those phone numbers is 232-9673 and 574-9673. So, Ashley, how long did it take from the time that this legislation was sponsored until it made its way through the subcommittee and committee process, and now apparently possibly could be heard as early as Tuesday or Wednesday of next week on the full floor of the House?
Maybe 2 days, Harry, from start to finish on the process of the committee.
Right.
Right.
Now,
I think that's right.
To put this in perspective, most folks are very supportive of an idea of school choice, where parents can keep some of their own money and send their children where they want to go to school. And that idea has been bandied about now for over 20 years. And yet, this legislation is sailing through in 2 days. And by the way, how do you do ethics reform when the ethics bill is secret?
It's a secret bill. That's well put. Journalists are on to this, though, folks. This time, with the help of the citizens out there who are listening, this won't get through, we hope.
Yeah.
Because journalists are on to it. And, you know, there were things in this legislation that members of the committee said they didn't know was in the legislation.
Well, I thought
Think
they
about
read the
that.
legislation before they voted on
Well,
it.
we don't know that there was any legislation,
Bingo.
remember?
Bingo. When you have no text to vote on, how do you know what you're voting on?
You don't.
All right. Now, folks, what makes this really special to Conservative Voice and those of us here in the upstate, my understanding is that this bill was co-sponsored by one of our own right here in Greenville County, Representative Bruce Bannister. Representative Bannister is the House Majority Leader, is that
Right.
correct? And he is a co-sponsor of this bill, H3945, H3945. I think Representative Bannister needs to do some explaining to not only his constituents in his personal district, but also to the rest of Greenville County as to why a bill that had no text was not made available for public input, had no citizens present during the subcommittee and committee meetings, because what would you be there for when you have no idea what the bill is saying? Representative Bannister, how do you explain to the people in your district and to the people of Greenville County how you support an ethics bill that decriminalizes criminal activity?
You bet. I think that's an explanation everybody deserves. And I want to just say this too, there is so much more to talk about in this legislation. But what people need to understand is this process, the way they pushed this through, in my memory, 15 years of being at the South Carolina Policy Council, John Krangle of Common Cause, 27 years, a journalist over at the state newspaper, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
You know, we don't remember a time when they've ever done this. It was a secret bill. It was secret, and for most of the time, all the time, it was being considered in committee. And here, the reason why, though, is becoming very, very clear to us, Harry.
Yeah.
I think we know why this bill was kept secret.
Yeah.
But I don't want anyone to have the illusion that this is ethics reform. It is not.
It's the exact opposite.
We're
going backwards.
Dangerously so.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the break, and I want to give out the phone numbers again. I hope that as you hear what is happening here in South Carolina by a Republican-controlled legislature, that you'll just say enough is enough. Something has got to be done. I want to give out those call-in numbers one more time. Hopefully you'll call in during the break. We can have some interaction there. We're looking at 232-9673 as well as 574-9673. You're listening to Conservative Voice with your host, Harry Kibler, and we will see you when we come back from break. Thank you.